Okay, so this is super important here, folks. The depth of your blade. You want to make sure that you're getting that exactly the depth of your wood. You can see here, I didn't even touch the paper underneath. It was enough to cut all the way through the wood but not touch the paper, and you want to do as little damage to your floor as possible, subfloor that is. But I'm trying to get close enough, so what you want to do is make sure you're getting close enough to zap these nails off, and make sure you're using a shitty circular saw blade. So you want to cut those nails off, right? And you can see now I've got a few going here, and I've got this one right here, so I've cut this one, and I'm pushing my luck a little bit. I'm going to start being a little bit more careful, but you can see how close I got there, and I almost damaged the board in front of it. That would obviously piss me off. So, I'm gonna pop this up with my pry bar, and once you get it, you just got to wiggle it a little bit, and it's gonna break that last little bit of wood that's hanging on. So you can pull it. Pardon me for the shaking. Time so that you don't damage that board in front of it. There you go. See, where'd that go? And there you go. She's out. Now I'm just gonna, this one here, I can just pull it right out. Gone. That is the perfect amount. So just a little over and around 1/4 of an inch, a little less than 1/4 of an inch. And this one here, nothing's holding this here because this is the groove. So that just pops right out like butter. Another thing I'm doing here, guys, here, let's focus this puppy. Another thing I'm doing here that you guys might find useful, or girls if this happens to be the case, I'm taking this, so I get my nails cut off, but the problem is they're still up too high. So I've been taking my pliers here, and it does hurt a little bit, but I brace it as much against my hand as possible, and I crack it with a hammer, and that drives that below the surface. So I don't have to worry about it, and it doesn't really hurt my hand. You can see that I'm pretty much injury-free here. So yeah, it's a trick, and it seems to be working. Okay, so it took a while. As you can see, I'm going to have 2 that are in the exact same spot, but the 3 boards apart, so I'm not overly concerned. This one here turned out to be a real bitch because these are super long boards, and I didn't want to cut them. So what I did was I cut this off straight. Both of these boards at the same time, and then what I did was I backed this one up and I cut it very carefully, and you can see I did a pretty good job. I've tested a board in there, I messed it up down here a little bit, but I tested a board, and just an after the fact thing so you guys can see how well that actually worked. You can see here that those are pretty darn perfect. You can see the whole weaving in actually worked. So I really wanted to show you guys problems and how I solved them as I came across them, but I haven't come across anything major yet, so stay tuned. I'm sure something big will happen. As you can see, I've got my first row, so I've done the transition, and I've got the first, I went with the longest one I could find, and I slid one in, not this guy here, but a super long one on this side, and I used it as my guide to get it straight. Fingers crossed on that one. Now I face nailed, you can see. I put in some face nails here, which will be covered by the trim. Maybe a little bit too much gap here, but that's not the end of the world, but it'll still be covered. And then I've used a normal trim nailer. It's a little bit tricky to do that. You've got to really get your angle right to make sure that that nail gets in good enough. And once I've done my 3rd row, or on my 3rd row I believe, we'll be able to use the proper. So we toothed it in, and we added in all the wood, used the nailer. It's fairly easy, lots of cutting. Actually not a lot of cutting, but lots of fitting and test fitting and redoing and stuff like that, and I think it's come out pretty nice here. So what you see here is a result of a lot of careful planning. So I cut each board individually to get a perfect line, and I'm going to run the other hallway perpendicular. And now we've done measuring, and I don't know if you can make out the chalk line kind of goes along there. There's a chalk line. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we had a straight shot from my son's room all the way into my room, and straight is more about eye. And so right now, what we did to get this line was we dry fit each one of these. So all these slip out. That hurt. All these slip out, and what we're going to do now that we've got the perfect line, which I did with my chop saw and just being very careful, now we're going to put them on after a beer. Just a note on what I did here, or what we did here, was we came up with about 3 different plans on how to get that row perfectly straight. And what we ended up doing was we took a 4-foot level, drew a line with a knife. We just slid the boards in so they weren't actually attached to anything, through that line with a knife, and then cut it as perfectly as we could. So you can see here, that's pretty perfect. Just one little mistake there, but at the end of the day, it can only get so perfect. We're pleased.